Hello and welcome to In the Pocket. My name's Jonny.
And my name's Chris.
Two totally average bass players, and we're here to talk all about that bass, as well as taking questions from lovely viewers at home. Each week we take a look at the latest news, maybe break down some tones, all to give you the lowdown on the low end. I went a bit rogue on that intro in bits because we're going rogue today, Chris. We are here at Andy Baxter Vintage Basses and Guitars, as you can see, surrounded by beautiful instruments with stories to tell that are worth far more than us two. So,
as people,
yeah, 100%. We are the disposable parts in this room. Like, if anything, if they're gonna we have to break something in here, it's far easier and cheaper to break one of us.
I am often the cheapest thing in the room.
And that's you want to be the dumbest in the room so you can learn.
Exactly.
You want to be the cheapest.
Exactly.
Most disposable. But yes. Chris, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm all right. I'll make it sound like we've just bumped into each other today. Just got here.
See you, man.
Yeah, we didn't drive down together or anything like that. No, I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Fantastic. I'm doing great, thanks, and all the better for being here with your lovely self.
Aww.
It was definitely, when we came in here, it was one of those moments, wasn't it, where like the heavens
it was
chorus.
It was like the bit in Hot Fuzz where they go to Danny's house and he opens that room and it's full of DVDs. It's like, by the power of Grayskull.
Oh my gosh. Are we dead?
Yeah. Oh.
Well, I'm definitely going to hell. So,
okay. Me too. Don't have a soul?
Oh, no.
No.
Of course.
No.
Sorry. Yeah, forgot about
Cheers, South Park.
So, why are we here today? Lovely people here at Andy Baxter invited us down to shoot some content and to do an episode here in the flesh live because vintage basses isn't something that we've really delved that much into or, personally have loads of experience with. So I'm excited as a passionate bass player to open up a new side of my experiences, because it's not every day that you get a chance to play some, original year instruments in some cases.
No, not at all. These are things that you just see online, don't you? Or you hear someone else on YouTube or Instagram talk about, this is my 1964 P bass, and you go, I'm sure that's nice. And so it's really good to sit and get to touch some wood.
100%, and that's exactly what we'll be doing here today. We're shooting for the podcast and for OnlyFans.
Yes.
So it's the perfect
coming
place.
2025.
Spelt the way that you
think that's a joke.
Yeah. So we're going to take a listen to some basses whilst we're here and also, answer some questions that you guys have given us and topics you wanted us to cover, as well as talking about what is the point in vintage basses? Why? And we'll perhaps play devil's advocate as we go through, about why someone might choose to and why someone might not have before, because I'm sure we've, like I said, we've not got loads of experiences. Why? So we'll talk about that. Before we do that, though, we will say a bit of admin up top. If you are not watching this on YouTube, you daft bugger, we can say bugger, can't we?
I think we can.
Of course we can.
Yeah.
I was going to drop in a C-bomb there instead. You daft, really.
We need to stop doing that. Have you done, there's so many other swear words.
I know.
We could just gently, we could even say you daft sod.
Yeah, we're in the north, so I feel like that is just
straight
even
in
more.
With the C-bomb. If we were Australian, we'd be demonetized.
It'll be howdy, straight to start the episode. Anyway, we won't do that because there might be children watching.
Yes.
Watching, listening, don't know. You should go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Help us get over 1,000 subscribers on there. We're nearly there. We just need your help. And, watching an episode like this is just better because you'll be able to see the things that we're talking about. And there'll be certainly some amazing sights to see, I think. So definitely go and do that. As well as that, questions, etc., all happen over on our Instagram at the moment. So make sure you go and follow us at In The Pocket Pod. Where, Chris?
In The Pocket Pod.
Thank you. Shall we cover our first topic?
I think we should do just that.
Let's do that. So because we are going rogue with this episode, we're going to go rogue with the format as well and put what is probably like the biggest question at the start, because it kind of, we're going to talk about these bits throughout the episode, so we don't want to just repeat ourselves really. So the big question really is why, and what is the point in buying a vintage instrument? What do you get? And, for some people, it's just not accessible because of the price. We're sat here in a room and, 4,000 would be enough cheap for something that's here.
There's some expensive stuff in this room.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like I said, for some people, that's just not accessible. And playing devil's advocate straight off the bat, I review a lot of affordable gear, and I'm always an advocate for how good sounds you can get out of cheap gear. I don't like using the word cheap, really. Affordable.
Affordable's a better one, because cheap always implies like cheap is bad. Like you go, oh, this is a bit cheap.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Like, we mess around with basses from like Harley Benton, Squire, Sire all the time, and there's been so many examples where me and you have gone, like, using the cheap word, we've gone, I can't believe how cheap this is, and it feels so nice and it feels like high quality. But I guess saying how affordable something is, because you're absolutely right. It's very easy to walk into an environment with this and go, God, there's a lot of expensive stuff in here. Like, why would I get a £6,000 P bass when I could get a classic vibe for a couple of £100 or even less used?
So, Chris, my question to you is, why should someone buy a vintage instrument?
I have no idea. No, there's when I think about it, for me, it's almost like the story behind the instrument itself, like the vintage instrument. Like, there's a lot of heritage. It's almost like these things have like souls to an extent. I know there's a phrase that I believe songs live in instruments, because I've picked up certain basses or certain guitars, started playing them, immediately gone, I've never really done that before. Like, why have I suddenly started doing this when I've picked up this Stingray? And I think with vintage instruments, there's just... It's difficult to like put it into like a binary format of like, factual. Yeah. But when you pick these things up, you almost like you pick up the history. Yeah. When you grab them, like we were messing around with there's a 1960 Jazz bass just behind this amp that we're going to talk about in a moment. And when I picked it up, it's like I picked it up and the first thing I said was, "This is as old as my mum." Sorry, Mum. But
so I instantly just love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wanting to cry.
There's a lot of issues.
Mummy bass issues, yeah.
Yeah. Oh God. But you pick stuff up, and it's like you pick the heritage up with it, and you go, how many people have sat with this like on their knee, and who's had this before me, and it's difficult to explain because I'm not really like a spiritual person. I'm just not. Yeah. But when you pick up these old instruments, you go, there's something here, as opposed to going to a music shop and just picking up, the current 2024 Fender Jazz bass, and you go, there's only really me who's grabbed this, and you go, oh, that's cool, like it's new, it's untouched, and that's cool too. But there's like they're almost heavy. They have like a gravity as you lift them. Yeah. So I'd say that's the main thing for me.
You're totally right about the song being in the guitar as well, to an extent, and I definitely find that. And it's actually a key factor for me, because I get a lot of gear in, and I bought a bass the other day that I probably shouldn't have bought. But I did, because I picked it up and played it, and I was like, this is music happens. I think it was Yannick that said, is it inspiring music straight away? Yeah. And that's the question I always ask myself that now when looking at a bass. If I'm playing one, I'm like, yeah, this is really opening up a new realm of my playing. Not like, oh, it's so easy to play so I can just play fast. I mean more like I feel musical when I play it. I feel like I want to write and I want to play this bass, rather than, it sounds amazing, but I'm just not inspired by it, So I think that's a totally valid point. Another point I'm going to say, whilst we're on the topic of sound, because arguably people would say, well, you can spend, you're not getting thousands of pounds more worth of bass, are you, in terms of sound? And all right, devil's advocate, no, you're not. But what you are getting is that played in sound. And we were discussing on the way up, the Bass Channel had done a experiment where they had a bass and they Was it a cheap bass or was it?
Yeah, it was one of the
affordable bass.
Affordable. It was one of the sort of lower end Warwicks, I think.
Right. And they took the strings off.
Yeah,
so they played it.
They got it new. They put a new set of strings on. They recorded DIs and all that sort of stuff of the instrument. Then they took the strings off. The strings went in a vacuum sealed bag. Then they spent a year gigging the crap out of this bass, giving it to as many different people as they knew, making sure it was getting played just hours and hours, like 4-hour bar gigs, just constantly. And then a year later, they came back, they put the same strings on that have been in an airtight bag, 12-month-old oxygen.
Science, keep it
Science,
fair.
kids. And recorded the same DIs again. And there actually was a pretty significant difference in the tone, which is really interesting. It was a lot. It had a lot more of like low mids. The treble had gone off a little bit. Yeah. It almost sounded, wait for it, a little bit more vintage sounding.
Oh, the V word.
Isn't that interesting?
My second favourite V word.
Vauxhall.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Knew it.
And it's true. And previously, I would have been like, "Oh, that's a bit fart sniffy," like that's
a bit like, yeah,
or like it goes into
drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes, and it goes into in the same realm of like tone wood, where some people are like, "No, it doesn't make a difference," but some people are like, "Yes, it absolutely does." I kind of start to fall into the latter of that, and that comes in the same realm, I think, where it does make a difference. That played in sound, and that might be a feeling. It might not actually.
It could be a placebo.
Yeah,
100%. If a placebo works, it's like I look at there's basses in this room that we've not touched. We've just looked at, and I'm imagining what they sound like.
Yeah.
There's a P bass on the wall behind us, and it's not one of the ones we're going to look at. I'm looking at that, and I go, "Oh yeah, I bet it sounds like this." And I'm wondering, when I sit down and plug it in, how much of that is like my brain sort of going warm. Vintage sounding. Like vintage isn't a sound. Vintage is a word.
Yeah.
Like that's not how it works. It's like, am I going to fill in those gaps myself? But I do think it's a thing. I definitely think there's a difference in sound from an older instrument.
Well, even if it was a placebo, it works.
Yeah, and if a placebo works, it works.
Yeah, and then that's fine. You're cured. You've got good tone now.
It's all in my head.
And so. For me personally, I feel like that is totally a thing, and it adds to the story that bass is telling. And there's no harm in investing in a bass that has a cool story, or you're like, this was owned by so and so, or I've done this and this and this with this bass. I think that's equally as cool. So
and you can do that if you want to do that.
Yeah,
you don't have to. I don't think a vintage bass is better than a modern bass.
That's where people start getting their panties in a bit of a twist when they're like, no, it is the best. And it's like, well, it's all contextual, and it's what you get out of it at the end of the day. We're not we're here, and obviously we're going to showcase some incredible basses and hopefully some amazing sounds. But we're not here to say this is what you need. This is absolutely what you need. Like it's not going to be. The brand new Ultra 2 Fender might objectively, to some people, be like so much better because it's what they want, it's what they need. And this just doesn't do that. But it's a different market. And whilst we're on the topic of market, I think that's another point that of a benefit of a vintage bass. It's an investment. You're spending a lot of money, but it's always going to go up.
Yeah.
Unless there are certain things that happen to that instrument, which we will touch on down the line.
Yeah, because there's nothing more annoying than buying a musical instrument new, and then a few years later trying to sell it, and basically just halving the retail.
Yeah, you've driven it off the forecourt.
Yeah,
and now
it's like with cars, isn't it? Like you buy a car brand new, and if you go back the day after, and then they have to resell it, they've got to take thousands of pounds off the which is brilliant because I want a new car. So and I won't be buying a new one. But it's very true, isn't it? Like these things, like it's vintage basses, vintage watches, vintage clothes. All these kind of things. It's like these things appreciate or they hold their value for X amount of time because there's always someone who's really going to want a 1968 jazz bass or 1972 Stingray and all these kind of things.
And talking about the different years, there is differences between the years in production, and that's what also adds to the value of these guitars. We've got a load of Stingrays behind you there, and a big thing for Stingray players is pre-Ernie Ball. Before Ernie Ball bought Music Man and the production changed, that's like this golden era. And we were talking earlier about difference of vintage, and like we'll talk more about ages and how that impacts it, but the year can have a massive impact on like the value, etc.
Yeah,
but we'll talk more about that later on.
Yes, we will.
Shall we check out some basses now?
I think we should do just that.
Incredible.
What are we going to go for first?
Right. I think
you distract the listener while I look at my notes.
100%. So we have picked out 4 different basses that we're going to try out today, 2 each.
Drop my phone.
We haven't actually decided which ones we're gonna play. I personally would quite like to play the P bass here.
I think we should do exactly that. Also, I love how I had to announce on the microphone on camera, I've dropped my phone.
Like they didn't hear. Bang, 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 bang.
I don't think it would have even come up, to be honest. I've dropped my phone, everyone. Just
we can mic it up if you want.
Johnny's cam. Yeah, I dropped my phone. There we go. I've picked it back up now.
Right. Okay.
So we're going to start off with this absolutely delightful 1958 P bass. Now, for those of you who don't understand how maths works, that's ages. Yeah. That's it. It's surprisingly similar to my 1989 P bass, which is also vintage. Thank you.
We'll talk about that later on.
It is vintage.
So
anyway, please, let's not talk about my rubbish £800 bass. Let's talk about this.
Do you know what surprised me straight away about this bass?
Go on.
Is how actually light it is. Like, I don't think it's that heavy.
Yeah, and it's not. No.
I was expecting like baseball bat neck, but it feels like a traditional P bass to me. I mean,
it doesn't.
This is literally a traditional P bass.
As it doesn't really get much more P bass than this. No, it's not. Like, I don't look at that and go, "Oh my god, look at that!" It's just fine.
And that's probably the difference between like a 51, the first one where it was huge in your hand, whereas this is super comfy. And yeah, should we have a listen?
I think we should have a listen. Are you going to do the honours of playing it? Let's turn this up. We're on.
Our angle's all good.
That in the room, because we've got a little amp here just for a bit of monitoring, you're hearing a DI. It's so nice. It's just so nice.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like it's spot on. No notes.
No notes.
Nothing wrong.
You played notes, but I have no notes.
Some things to obviously consider with this one. Like I said, it has got flats. We've got all the ashtray covers on there, and we've got the reverse tuners as well. Because one thing with vintage instruments, they went the other way originally, and then they changed them back, or changed them to be the way that we know now, up, down, etc.
It's crazy, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah, and that's a minus point for me. It's a thing to get used to. I had a 50s reissue Mexican P bass for a little bit, and to be vintage accurate, it had that, and I was like, I always did it the wrong way around, just muscle memory.
But that's a cool point though, because it's almost the same with like when you can buy vintage cars, but they've added like modern features on it. You know, like things like anti-lock steering or stuff to do with the brakes, and it's like, do you want that, or do you want this to be, you know, this is like the legit reverse tuners, or do you want things that are like, yeah, it's a vintage instrument, but functionality. I'm not saying put an active preamp in it. This comes with a dark glass preamp. Can you imagine?
And the knobs are in the back.
Yeah, and they're on the back. They're controlled with an app. Yeah, it's like, do you want those super authentic vintage things that might actually just be a bit of an inconvenience day to day, or do you want all the fun parts of the vintage elements, like the aesthetic, the feel, and all that sort of stuff, but then have nice tuners that work pots that aren't dirty or anything like that. I mean, that's just cleaning. That's a little bit different. But what do you want? You know, that's food for thought, I think. Tone off. Do it. Leave it there.
I will say the I'm not used to covers. They get in the way a little
weird,
bit.
aren't they?
Yeah.
Are you in front of the ashtray or behind it?
I'm behind.
Behind it. I went in front and quite liked it.
Oh, really?
But I've started doing that a little bit more. I've noticed I'm like properly floating my hand.
Oh,
like
right.
all the way like here now at the moment without touching. Like my thumb's on nothing. I'm just winging it.
Wow.
Which is really strange. But,
well, I mean, that's what that original thumb... We call it a thumb rest, but it's a tug bar.
Yeah.
Really.
Now I actually kind of want one back on my bass.
Yeah.
Which is very strange because I spent the last like 10 years going, what the hell is this? So this ugly little piece of plastic. It's got soul. It's not a soldier.
It's weird to play that.
Soul.
Like, I'm well out of practice of playing like that. It's very strange. Do you want to give it a quick go?
I'll have a quick old fiddle.
Tone up for this one, is it? Oh, it looks good on you. Nice. Do you know what? One misconception I have about vintage instruments sometimes
Go on.
is that like they're not going to play well. And I don't know why. I always think action's going to be high and it's not going to be for me because I think it's because I picture it being in someone's shed for like years doing nothing or like it's battered, you know. But everything we've picked up here today has played fantastic. And I will be said, things do get set up here. There's a whole workshop behind us here where Andy works his magic and, you know, can probably bring them back to life in cases where they're dogs because not every vintage instrument is amazing, you know, or is going to be perfect. These things are living creatures, you know, they need to be kept up to date. And, you know, I don't mean by modernizing them, but they need treating. They need setting up every now and then, the necks, bow in temperatures. So yeah, there is upkeep required on these things. But yeah, this one in particular plays fantastic. Which was the year on this one again? This was the 58. Wow. So super early. Well, late 50s P bass, as you can see from the, you know, the introduction of anodized gold is a classic with the maple neck, classic late 50s P bass thing. And that's probably that and 70. Oh no, I do like the 60s P basses as well.
It comes as no surprise. I obviously really like this because funnily enough, I have a bass that's aesthetically the same-ish as this. But yeah, just talking about the feel for a second, like... just feels like a brand new setup, modern instrument. Like there's no... You would think like, oh my God, the action is like, you know, the strings are 8 foot off the neck and all that sort of stuff. But no, just feels nice.
Plays fantastic. Yeah. Love it. You gonna buy it?
Yeah.
And the next one as well.
Swap you for mine.
Should we get this, move on from the 50s to the 60s?
Yes.
Let's do that.
Groovy, baby.
Let us know in a comment down below, if you're watching this on YouTube, what your favorite bass is that you hear today. And maybe what your experience is with vintage basses. It's a hot topic sometimes. And, you know, all opinions are valid, but we don't want to... No, we don't want anyone to fall out in the comments, all right? We know what you like. So we'll keep it clean down there, folks. Right, this is a 60s jazz bass with a bit more of a story to tell again, I think.
What this is confusing. Stack knobs scare me.
That's not what you said last night.
OnlyFans 2025. We might have to beat that. I wonder if that gets you demonetized on. I wonder if that's enough to get you demonetized on YouTube.
What?
Just saying the name of said website.
They might just stop the reach so much.
Well, I
don't know. Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
we'll just bleep it out. And it sounds like we're swearing
That's
instead.
even funnier.
Right, you keep talking. I'll put this back.
Yes, you put that back. I will say what this is. So this marvelous creature that I'm currently trying to turn the volume off on. Is that how I do it? That is how I do it. Look at that. We're learning together. This is I was going to turn it so only I could see it then, which I thought was very great broadcasting. Very great broadcasting. Oh, God. Anyway, so this is a 1960 stacked knob jazz bass in a Lake Placid blue finish. I will jump in quickly and say
blue?
Yes, blue, even though it looks green. This is sold, so you can't have this, unfortunately. Very nice. Yes, a Lake Placid blue. But we were told while we were setting up that Lake Placid blue goes green over time because the clear coat has yellow in it.
Yeah.
So if you look at the front, hopefully this comes across on my camera okay, but if not, we'll put it in your shot too. You see, it's a pretty green looking instrument.
Yeah.
However, when you flip it around, you'll notice, if you look at the sort of wear and tear on this section, you see it's more like closer to the original colour, which is blue.
Yeah.
But this thing is absolutely fantastic. Now, we talked about the weight of the P bass and when, this doesn't feel really heavy. Give this a go.
Oh, woof.
That is a good old piece of wood.
Yeah. Damn. Obviously, we've got this huge ashtray cover contributing to that as well. Big boy again. Do you know the story behind these? We spoke about, I think Ian taught us this little bit. They were to cover up the electronics because Leo Fender thought they were ugly and didn't want to show them. So he was like, right, let's cover them up. And that's why this one is, so huge to encompass the position of to cover the bridge pickup as well as the bridge. So just a weird old thing that Leo personally wanted to put in there. If that's wrong, at Ian Martin Allison, or if I've told it wrong, at me. No, please don't. Shall we have a listen to what this bad boy can do? We're going to go tone all the way up on both, is this? If it's all the way to the right, yeah, we're good. Right, let's have a listen.
I don't play like that. And then immediately, again, it's the same thing. Like, I immediately wanted to, start almost thinking, what do you do when you play bass in the 1960s?
I instantly go staccato.
Yeah.
Instantly
well,
do
let's
that type of
not
thing.
do that. One second.
All right, give us some normal ding 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 ding. Full 2-hour set, please.
Oh, okay, sure.
No. We don't start Chris in Metallica. It sounds, for a jazz bass, and the flats will contribute to this, but very not as bright and poppy as a traditional one.
Really makes you want to put flats back on things now.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah. I've got that at the minute with a Stingray. I really want to put flats on the Stingray.
Been listening to Joe Dart a bit too much now, yeah.
Yeah, well, the Passive Ray 2, to sideline a little bit here, it sounds its best when doing that kind of thing, I think.
I might do that with mine.
And I don't have a flat space at the minute.
Yeah, I don't. I've got the flats that were on my P bass.
Yeah.
I've just taken them off and put them to one side because my P bass has got rounds on it right now. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to do that with the flats because
yeah.
I don't need it for a super bright sound right now, so I'm going to give it a go. But anyway, back to the much more gorgeous instruments that we've got here. The stack knobs. So this is essentially just like a traditional jad bass. Master volume for each pickup, and then an individual tone for each pickup. So it means you can have the neck all the way open, but the bridge a little bit darker if you want that darker sound. It just gives you more control, basically, over them. It's interesting that they moved away from that.
Yeah,
and I don't know the exact reason why they did that. Maybe people weren't utilizing it. Maybe it was just cheaper.
Could be that. I also think it's probably a case of people were like, I don't want to have to quickly turn down both tone knobs. It's like, if I want the tone rolled off, I just want the tone rolled off. Really.
I'll do that.
That's how I interpret that. But they feel these knobs are great to play with. I will say they feel really nice.
Nice knobs.
The last time I played a stacked knob bass, it was horrible because I'm pretty sure they were broken. But that was at a certain place we will talk about. But these feel great. This bass feels amazing. Like, this is like really nice.
Is it?
Like,
it looks so cool.
Yeah, I really want more. I really like this fortunately quite a lot now.
You're gonna get sadder and sadder throughout this whole episode.
It's gonna be horrible.
More and more that you just love.
I'm gonna cry in the car on the way back as we go back to our stupid Mexican.
Can I have a go?
No. Yes, you can. Yeah, so make sure you turn those back on. The flats jazz bass thing is something I have never ever bothered with, but I'm feeling it. I'm really hoping that's coming across on the recording as well, because in the room we've got the treble kind of halfway down on the amp, and everything else is just at noon. But it's just I could just play with that sound, and we're pedal guys, as well.
We love like drive and treble and
drive and treble, clank, whacking it with a pick, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then today it's almost like the bass has gone now.
Yes, you do not abuse me this way.
Listen here, sunshine. I've been around for a long time.
A lot longer than you.
That's not how we do it around here. It's like Captain America. Like, no, I don't think I will.
Yeah. It plays, super nice. The flats definitely help achieve that kind of sound, and it just suits the bass down to the ground. Really.
Smooth.
Interestingly, with this one, I didn't know where to put my hands at the start there. I wasn't sure, what feels better here? I'll try a little bit of slap if I can, but I think this might
please do.
Move out of the way a little bit.
This should be good. I think this is going to be the phrase of the day. No notes. That's
it.
Yeah.
Just love it.
Really nice. Really nice. Do you want to pick?
No.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't
Grow up. Right. Let's move on to topic number 2.
Let's get on to topic number 2, shall we?
You explain that while I put this back.
Okay. So for this one now, we're going to be talking a little bit about what we teased about earlier, talking about, what is vintage, what counts as a vintage bass, what year technically is the cutoff or whatnot, and people will have different opinions of this, so I think it'd be interesting to share our thoughts, and we've kind of got almost differing opinions on this. I think
so.
So I want you to say you'd go first, and then I will explain why you're wrong.
Okay, that's nice. I think vintage is older than 30 years. So I'm vintage now, and you're not. How does that make you feel?
I take it back. You're right.
Thank
you're
you.
Totally right.
My market value is significantly higher than yours.
Ooh.
Yeah, and the reason why I think that is if you don't do that, like if you don't have a specific thing of like after X amount of years after production, it's vintage, you're going to reach a point where the generation after us, or even just us when we're older, vintage instruments won't exist. There'll be no such thing as a vintage instrument because there'll only be so many up to, let's pretend anything after 1970 can't be considered vintage. What's going to happen there? They're going to be more and more sought after. I think you'll reach a point where the resale market for those instruments will be impossible. There'll be 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. They'll be completely unattainable for anyone who isn't the person who bought them now.
So to contradict that, straight out the bat, I'm thinking about what about like a Squire? It becomes 20 years old. It's vintage, but are people going to be attracted to that in the future? Because these were speaking broadly, dime a dozen, mass-produced, more likely to have lemons in there. Is that going to be an attractive thing to people in the future? And the components are not as good. So does that mean that that's a vintage instrument?
I think it's tricky, really, because you could still class that as a vintage instrument. The thing is, though, you won't have the market price increase. Because, you will, because eventually, things will get broken and lost and destroyed and thrown away and all that sort of stuff. So you'll end up with less and less of those Squires that are around now, but in 50 years, But what happens if, Squire disappears? What if next year Fender goes, Squire's gone, we're never doing it again? And then the name's got, imagine. And then in job. 50 years but imagine we're in our 70s and 80s, and all of a sudden people go, is that a Squire Classic vibe from 2024? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God.
And that has happened with some of them, like the older classic vibes. We won't talk about the JV, Japanese ones. That's a bit different.
Japanese is a little bit different. It's kind of like a little subgenre within itself.
Yeah.
So we'll ignore that for now.
But I think the 2011 classic vibes, like that kind of era, the gold logos were better than they are now, because that brings me on to my point about vintage, of how they were made and where they were made.
Well, that's when we were talking to Andy, that was kind of Andy's reason as to why anything after 65 or something, he said something like that, was he wouldn't classify it as vintage because the manufacturing has changed.
Yes. And it's when CBS acquired Fender, it was no longer this small team. That's when the mass production and the upscaling of Fender began, and rightfully so. That had to happen eventually. It's not going to forever stay this little custom shop, but that is the era that people are after, because it's got that story, it's got that played in thing. It is old, and you still will get those benefits with instruments that are 30, 40 years old, those Squires, etc. When we're a ripe old age, but you're not getting the craftsmanship that went into that as such. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the price of old custom shop instruments that are made now that technically should be the same as how they were manufactured back then, and then with years on them,
It's difficult because I think it really is a time will tell.
Yeah.
How are we going to influence the market when we are in our 50s and 60s and older? Because our generation just might not care.
Yeah.
And what was 40 years old, 50 years old now, that in 50 years from now is now 50 years old in turn, our generation and the generation below us might go, don't care.
Yeah.
And why do I want this? It's not even that good.
Yeah. And there are vintage instruments on the market secondhand now that are not worth much. There'll be some unknown brand that was a copy of copy of a P bass, weird name no one's heard of.
Fender, is it called Music Master or something like that?
The student bass.
The one that's a bit like a Mustang.
Yeah. Single pickup.
They're very old, but they're not going for... You can get 70s ones for £800.
Yeah.
Floating around.
Yeah.
And it's why have they not exploded into multiple thousands? So it's interesting. That's why... It's tricky because I still think it should be after X number of years, we will refer to this as vintage.
Yeah.
And that could be the same with, well, let's think about cars. Like, I've got a 2014 Nissan Micra. I think it's older than that, actually. It's like in 30...
Can't believe you just admitted that.
Yeah. Great car. No, it's not. In 30 years from now, it will be in a skip on fire. But it's like, will that really be considered the same as like a Cadillac from the 60s? Because like, think of a car that the normal person drove in the 60s. Fast forward to now, people collect them. They're worth hundreds of thousands of dollars.
People always say the more technology that goes into cars, etc., the more likely it is to break. All the electronics, like that is not going to last forever necessarily. And compared to a finely tuned car that's been up, the upkeep's been kept up on it. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it will keep going forever theoretically.
Theoretically, as long as maintenance breaks down. But that's only the same as basses, isn't it? Like, I've got this 1960p bass and the pot's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're just going to have to clean it. If we can't clean it, we'll have to replace it. Or I bet there's a few basses in here that have had the frets redone and stuff like that, or just over time. And I don't think that affects the value of the instrument. That's just, a lot of people they'll go, oh God, it's had a fret dress.
Yeah.
It's from the 50s and it's had a fret dress in 1991. Oh, worthless.
We should talk about that in our next section because I think there's a lot we can kind of cover in there.
But in short, no, do you want to go first?
I was just going to say that I think that if we're talking about, these aren't going to be around forever, etc., the time to get a vintage instrument then is probably now. Because, like we said, they're going to rocket in price as those other basses start being considered vintage. These are only going to go up.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
It's a good investment in a way, and that's potentially why somebody might consider buying one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so out of my price range, or what I would consider, what I would pay for one, but. If I was really thinking about it in the future, if I'm not going to gig this instrument loads, etc., it could just sit at home in a good temperature room somewhere and appreciate.
But value is dictated by how much are you willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, at the same time, you could sell every bass you own, sell a load of other stuff that you don't need, all that sort of stuff, and then go, I'm going to have one bass, and it's this 1960-something, this one's been sold, obviously, but I'm going to sell everything else and get a 1960s jazz bass, and I do everything forever with that. To a lot of people, that's very appealing.
Yeah.
It's less appealing for us because you need variety as part of YouTube. I need variety as part of YouTube and social media. I need to cover, ground. Like, I can't do everything on a jazz bass. I could give it a pretty good go, but I probably couldn't cover everything the same way I would want to. So I want a Music Man. I want P bass. I now want short scale. All those kind of things. And you can't do that if you're buying only vintage instruments, because I've just listed 50 grand's worth of payments.
And here's this £50 pedal through a £5,000 bass.
I'd watch that reel.
Which matters more? Yeah. But it's interesting why the different reasons as to why somebody would buy it. There's lots of what, when, who, what, how, lots of questions.
The key word is subjective.
Yes.
I feel like it really is. Do you, if you're like a hard number, facts and figures person, you might go, I see no reason in purchasing this. For the money, I could buy 15 of another bass that when you stick it on your lap and you play it, you can't really feel a difference. And if that's you, I think that's perfectly fine. But then there'll be other people who play a Mexican standard P bass and go, yeah, it's all right. I'm not inspired. But then they put this bass on and go, I could play this for 10 hours.
And that's why blindfolded tests are really interesting, because you might hear something and be like, yes, that to me sounds better. But you take the blindfold off and you go, I still want the vintage one, because that, obviously there's potentially an aesthetic thing to that, but also you're like, I want a piece of that pie and I want a bit of that history, and it inspires me to pick it up more, potentially.
I just watched a blind shootout of 5 or 6 Mustang basses.
Right.
And it was a true blind shootout. They deliberately made it where you didn't see the bass, you were just looking at a waveform and listening. And I went into it going, I want a JMJ. I want a JMJ Mustang. That's the one. That's the one. And I did the blind test, and it was kind of like 4th place.
Yeah.
Out of the ones I wanted.
Is this Philip Conrad's video?
It was.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the Classic Vibe Mustang. I was like that. Even before I saw the price, I think I ranked it number 2 on sound.
Yeah.
And then, but the one that beat it was like 3 times the price. And then I was like, oh,
and
okay.
We said it before, like you're not getting 10 grand's more worth of, like, it's not a 10 grand better bass. It's not exponential like that. You know, you're not getting a better bass. Basically, what I'm saying is for that amount of money, but it's not about that almost. No. And it's a certain type of person that's have a passion for it that's going to be buying something like that.
Absolutely.
Should we play some more basses?
Let's play some more basses.
Let's do it. Right. What should we go for next?
It's your turn.
Eyeing up. I think we should check out this Stingray behind you.
Okay, you can do that, and then I'll do the last one.
No, we're sharing. We've decided we're sharing. No, because this one was for you, and I chose that other one.
Yeah, that's why I should get to play it.
Stop it.
Okay, right. Let's do this Stingray. So I'm going to hand it over to you. We do this one, yeah? Okay. I'll hand this to you. Oh, it's got a bit of heft, that one. And I'll tell the lovely people what it is. What it is Coming Home With Me. So what we have here, interestingly enough, is a 1979 Music Man Stingray. But the interesting thing is, this is a coral red refinish, which we were sort of discussing as like a interesting way to get into the vintage bass market. Because is it my understanding that a refinish would actually take the price down?
Oh, 100%. Because someone's modded it from the original, originally what it was.
Ruined it.
Yeah, it's awful. No, I mean,
awful.
Obviously...
completely unplayable.
A traditional 70s Stingray, this probably would have been a sunburst one, I imagine, or a black one. I reckon it's a sunburst one if it's the original pick guard as well, because that kind of white... that white look is classic, what people go for. But yeah, this has been done really, really nice. I don't know exactly how much money a refin would knock off, but like you said, it's certainly a way for people to enter the market potentially. And these will still be going up in value, So a couple of differences. What makes this a 70s one? What have they changed over the years? Like I said, this is pre-Ernie Ball. So Ernie Ball, there's no mention of Ernie Ball on the headstock. So it's just the Music Man logo and Stingray bass. Slight differences with this is it's just a 2-band EQ instead of a 3. So there's no mid control, which I actually prefer on a Stingray, not going to lie.
No, I disagree.
No,
disagree. The mid range is the one I'm touching the most.
Really?
Yeah,
so
all the time.
Most of the time on my Rays, I just... when I've had ones that have had a mid, I just always kept it standard.
I'm always taking it up and down.
Less is more, Chris. It's a saying for a reason.
More is more. More is more.
And it also has mutes on the bridge as well that you can dull the sound a little bit. And Stingrays were a total change of form really from Leo's design with this huge magnet pole pieces in the ceramic humbucker that we've got down here, and just gave a totally different sound. Much higher. First active bass that we had in there as well. So I'm going to shut up now. We're going to have a listen to it.
Please do. Really looks nice, this. Take it away. Cover that up, quick, cover that up. I love anytime you watch like a demo or a long form video with anyone who isn't us, it's always the playing is immaculate every time, and then we get stuff wrong and then we leave it in. And also those YouTube channels, they're making mistakes too. They're just editing them out. And no. It's too average. It's too average.
Real.
It's too average bass players for a reason.
I was like, this is going well. I don't want to just repeat the same thing. Maybe I'll just change it. And this is all going through my head. In The Wrong Trousers by Wallace and Gromit.
Very well, yes.
By Wallace and Gromit, like they made it.
By Wallace and Gromit. Well, they did. Documentary.
Directed by Wallace. that bit where Gromit's on the train and he's putting down the track as he's going along. That's me when I'm playing most of the time. I'm like, where next?
That's me all day. It's a combination of that and Mark Corrigan from Peep Show just talking to himself.
Jeremy.
Right. Anyway, I'll play it in a minute, but how was it?
Lovely. It
no
gives
notes?
No notes. It gave that should have been the name of this podcast. The No Notes podcast. We've got everything boosted here, and it just gives that signature, like, scoopy, high-end sound, really. It's got rounds as well for the first time here, and that just, for what we're going for here, that, you know, a Stingray is quite, it can have flats on it, like we were saying, like we like that sound, but also it just does that high-end pop super well. Hence why I just automatically did some slap, you know, because it just sounds great. I might play this with a pick as well. Do you have one there?
Yeah, but I want to play it with a pick.
Oh, come on. All right.
We're sharing.
Yeah, that's very, very
Thank
true.
you.
I'm going to do just a little bit of fingers and then we'll do it.
Well. Brilliant. Love it. Quite a lot louder than the other two we've played, but to be expected.
Well, we're adding in bass and treble from the bass itself, you know, so it's going to do that. Here you go. Like I said, this is a 70s one. Just flip it over for a minute, sorry. Another change. See, we've got the screwed in batteries and the string through body here, as well as the 3-point. So different things you can tell the era of this Stingray. Some little telltale points. But let's go, baby. We're going to go pick straight off the bat.
Oh. Give him big. Just give him. Let's give him big.
Stingrays always react really well to a bit of oomph input behind them, don't they? Like, it just sounds so good because they're naturally like clangy. It just sounds good with it.
That's really nice. Like I was digging in then, like really, and it's really nice.
It must be said. Obviously, like we said, we're hearing this through this amazing little amp peg. I think it's the VR with the 210 cab for monitoring the room. But you guys are just hearing a straight DI. So interesting to see how that one sounds. I don't think we'll put any amps in on it, but if we decide to, we'll put it on the screen.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think it'd be really cool to do. Let me just loop. I'll just play like a little 4-chord thing.
Yeah, for this bass in particular.
In this bass,
cool.
And then when we edit it, we'll just add on just like a generic amp sim.
All right,
just a stock plugin.
Let's do that. If you are enjoying this episode and want to show us that you're doing so, you should head over to your listening platform of choice if you are doing it on there, and rate us 5 stars. You know, it helps something to do with algorithms reach more people. A thing like today wouldn't have been possible without you guys at home showing us your love, essentially, and that you're enjoying this. So, yeah, we can't do things like this without your support. So thank you so much for doing so. Make sure you go and do it if you're listening that way. Chris, I heard you struggling then when you picked this up. Can I hold this?
It's not heavy. But...
It's not heavy. Oh, my goodness. Look at that. You're not mic'd up, by the way, at the minute, so the people can't hear you. Stop swearing. Stop it. Thank you very much. Oh, it's not heavy. I thought that was going to be an
No, it was
absolute
more
beast.
the fact that as I picked it up, I was like, oh God. It's just a bit all over the place. But, yeah, so what do we have here? Just to finish off, I'll check I've got the date correct. One moment. So this is a 1966 Thunderbird. The volume is off on the amp. That's why you're thinking that sounds weird. We're not going to turn that on. So this is a 1966 Thunderbird. This is a non-reverse model, as this is, of course, the original shape. And, it's one of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life. But, you know, that's just me. And apart from that, thoughts? Oh, you're not mic'd up. Okay, Johnny agrees. Apparently it plays like a dog.
I can't believe you said that this is ugly. I absolutely love the non-reverse. I think it's so cool. And interesting that this was the first design. I always wondered why they were called non-reverse. And now I know, because it is technically a reverse Thunderbird, but they did it the other way around.
That cool. Headstock is literally like the size of a ukulele.
It
absolutely massive.
Is it the size of my head?
It's basically the size of your head. Can you imagine a headless Thunderbird?
Oh, stop it! Somebody. I think somebody's made it.
I do like. So this is not. This is non-reverse. This is reverse. Non-reverse.
Non-reverse.
I'd reverse it.
Stop
headless.
It. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
this has got one pickup, hasn't it? Just the single.
That certainly looks like it.
So this is just volume and tone. So we're going to go tone. I'm going to play with the pick first of all. Can you slide me that sweet Dunlop pick?
Oh yes, 0.6. All right, let's give you a bit of amplification. Oozes vintage coolness, though, I will say. Does sound great.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't feel it before. I wasn't expecting it to have flats almost. I think with 2 pickups like they went on to have later on, I think it then suits that round wound sound for something like this. I'll play it with fingers next, and then we'll mess around with the tone a little bit perhaps to see what these sound like, because this is a different type of pickup that we've had. You know, it's like a mini humbucker almost, more like a soap bar kind of shape, and in the middle position, you know, between the neck and the bridge, so a bit like a P-bass position, but more, it's kind of a mix between all the basses we've looked at today, to be honest, in terms of pickup and position. So
it's definitely a different sound, especially coming from the Stingray. It's very different. Very different. Oh, wow. Well,
I felt like when we took the tone off, then it added quite a bit of like mid-range almost. Like it gave that bit more like pokiness, which was cool. You know, I liked it. You can see the tug bar shape here is clearly put around that direction to show you where your finger's really meant to be. Of course, later on, moved it kind of up here to be more fitting to how players were actually using it. And you just love tugging it like that, I suppose. Looks weirdly quite good on you. I think you need to buy it. It's definitely the darkest of like all the basses you've checked out today, for sure.
And it's really strange because like just this is with the tone all the way up. Like,
I think this bass definitely is more what I picture when I think of a vintage bass. Almost, it's neck heavy. It's massive. You know, it's that Gibson. It's a vintage Gibson. It feels long. You know, it's darker. It's giving more of that kind of thing.
Yeah, it kind of This one feels like I've stepped back in time. All the others don't.
And it's interesting that obviously all the others are still thriving today.
Yeah.
Not so much.
This is interesting. Yeah, but it's just quick. I'm just going to quickly play again with the tone up and down.
Yeah.
And if anything, turning the tone down seems to bring out loads more mid-range.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Should we do it a loop with, just keep looping it and try with the amp sim on this one as well?
Yeah, we'll do that too.
They definitely improved it by adding the second pickup. Gave it more of that Thunderbird kind of vibe, you know, in terms of sound and what we know. That just shows where basses progress and change over time. It's cool to see and see the benefits and the drawbacks sometimes of that. Shall we move into our final chit chat?
Yes, please. Let's do just that.
So, vintage instruments, they get bashed around. They've been around for a long time. And, you know, a lot of the ones in here, as you can see, are far from perfect condition on like the bodies. You can see it's old. Bit like, you know, your face, you know, gets a bit bashed up and wrinkly over time as the sun has just burnt into it. And that's
there's no sun up here. No.
That's why you looked fantastic.
That's why I'm ageless.
For a 50-year-old man, you're looking good.
I'm looking good. Me and Rick Beato are the same age.
Yeah. And so, you know, relicing is something that people have such a strong opinion on. Why relic a new bass to look like an old one? And like, I don't like it because it's damaged looking. And what does that do to value as well? You know, I think we should talk about this a little bit more. So what do you think about relic basses or ones that are reliced?
Buying a new instrument that is reliced, so like, as in that's the actual intention, the model is a reliced model.
Yes, yeah, it is reliced.
That does nothing for me. Like, I'm personally not interested in that. Different though, if you buy an instrument and you've got two options: buy an instrument and then you relic it, as in you relic it yourself deliberately with like sandpaper and try and strip the finish, all that kind of stuff. I think that's fine. I think if you want to do that to your instrument, that to me is only the same as going, well, I've ripped the pickup out and I've put a different pickup in, or I'm having a different pick guard put on it. It's an aesthetic decision.
Yeah.
What appeals to me more is buy an instrument new, like new condition, I mean, and then batter it. Like, you're not relicing it. It's like I don't baby any of my basses that I'm gigging, because I actively want them. I want them to get scratched. I don't want them to get scratched in terms of like I've dropped it.
Yeah.
But like belt buckle rash.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing them today to protect the instruments, but I normally wear rings, and some of my basses are starting to get little nicks and chips on the neck, on the underside of the neck from said rings over time. Well up for that. I love the fact that my 89p bass, vintage, my 89p bass was already a bit scratched up and stuff like that. Like, that really appealed to me.
One day, someone's going to look at your vintage Dingwall and be like, "Wow!" And look, you can tell the story. Somebody was using rings. They had rings on. You can see the scratches.
The thing is, we joke though, but it's like that's a NG2 X year import model. They haven't made those for like 40 years. Like eventually, I do believe that's going to be considered a vintage instrument. And even not mine, like the import models, certainly the sort of OG combustions that are made in Canada, I mean, they're already skyrocketing in price. So in 20, 30, 40 years from now, I think they will be sought after the same way we look at Stingrays and jazz basses, I think. Yeah. Because in the same way, controversial, but I stand by it, in the same way the P bass revolutionized bass, creating an electric bass, Dingwall with like the fan frets and stuff like that, the original models, like way before the one I own, I think they will be regarded in 60, 70 years from now as like a pioneering instrument. Absolutely, I think they will.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. Again, it comes into like have the practices of mass production. When things are done imported, and I know they're taken to Canada.
This is before that. I mean, not like
sorry,
mine.
Yeah, but I'm referring to that.
Yeah.
Like
that may or may not be.
That might not be sought after so much if the same range of that is just done so much better in the future. It depends.
But they're already so much more expensive compared to when I bought mine. And even mine, it was buying mine secondhand was still quite expensive compared to what they used to be. But I do think the OG Dingwalls, which are already quite expensive anyway, I think they will explode. But in short, to summarise, my thoughts, relicing, buying a new instrument that has been reliced as part of its manufacturing process, it does absolutely nothing for me. I'm not interested in that. But if you buy it and relic it yourself, either deliberately with sandpaper and tools, or you just use and abuse it, and over time it's relict, I think that's fantastic, and you should absolutely do that.
Now, another way, like we said earlier, that people can... vintage instruments can be a bit more accessible is by their condition. So obviously a mint condition 58p bass is going to be worth more than a real relic one, because it's better condition. Like that's what you want. But people like the relic look because it looks old, and that is a vibe, and that's why people then want to do the relic job on it, because it looks battered up, it looks messed up, it's been through the wars, and they want it to kind of have that on there. That's why people like it. Personally, I love a relic bass. I think it looks really good when it's like a bit bashed up. I'm not babying any of my basses at gigs. I'm jumping up and down and doing headbanging, doing all sorts and moving around. It happens all the time, like knocking it or doing things like that. I don't baby them. So naturally, I have to enjoy a relic. But yeah, it all comes down to the value and wanting to have that vintage look. Now, buying something that's relict, it all depends on the job and how good it is.
Not all relic jobs are created equal.
No.
Like, for example, your Alpha bass,
yeah,
not a vintage instrument, of course. fantastic relic job. Looks like it. I don't look at it and at no point go, this has been relicked. To me, it looks like someone actually bought it in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And just gigged it for hours and hours a week.
I wanted it to have that look because it was kind of, the shape was like 70s sci-fi. It reminded me of, and
it's very Star Trek, I think. Yeah,
Star Wars as well. That's more my
obviously
bag.
Star Wars is superior to Star Trek in every way.
Well,
Controversial, but that's
leave us a comment down below.
That's just me. Leave a comment down below. Are you a Trekkie or
a Warsy?
A Warsy? Is that what
no,
they're called?
I don't like that. No,
a Warsy.
No,
I don't know what the slang term is.
No.
That's completely irrelevant. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, and the thing I love about those films is that everything looks awful. It's all dirty, it's all battered, and it adds to the world building. It's not shiny and new, and that's what the prequels did well in a way, because things were a bit shinier and then things get worse as time goes on.
Well, yeah, because we're going into the economic political climate of the Star Wars universe, but obviously that's the Republic, where everything was going a bit well, and then what the original trilogy joiners is in the middle of decade-long conflict with a rebellion. Like, so I don't think the Millennium Falcon has a lot of time to get cleaned and doesn't get taken for an MOT because it's an illegal vehicle, isn't it? So exactly.
And that's what I wanted to kind of replicate as well. And I spent a lot of money on that bass. I don't want to notice when I drop it. When I inevitably sting it, I want that to just blend in and become part of it. It was very much design. I was like, yes, let's kind of medium relic this so that anything I do, I won't get upset about, because it'll blend in, and that's fine.
And that's a very good idea. It's almost like if I got one and it was brand new, the first thing I would do is just stab it with a key and go, there we go, chipped that, there we go, and now I don't feel bad about gigging it.
I won't get upset about the second one. Yeah, exactly. And
you are literally the meme of, like, musicians will put a £4,000 bass in a £400 car, drive 400 miles for a £40 gig.
That is my life. Yeah, that is me.
And on that bombshell?
Yeah. Done. But yeah, relicking, I think it all comes back to vintage instruments, and obviously something that's mint is going to be worth more, but it tells less of a story.
It's interesting to me because I agree that a pristine vintage instrument should absolutely cost more than a relic one. Absolutely. Why would it not? But if someone said to me, which one do you want more? I want the one that obviously plays well and all that, but I want the 50s P bass that looks like it's from the 50s.
Yeah.
I don't want this is perfect, it's lived in a HVAC sealed safe since the 50s. I'd be like, that's an incredible piece of history. I'd love that, and I hope it stays like that forever. However, I want the one that looks like it's been dragged through a skip for 60 years.
All those opinions are valid.
Absolutely.
You might hate the way it looks, and then you want it to look perfect. That's fine. And for value, absolutely, that's way better.
It's like, are you purchasing this? Is this an investment, or is this I'm gigging this to use it? Like, for me, it always has to be because I'm using it. That might change in the future. Like, I might want a bass that's like, this is pristine, it's perfect. I don't play it outside the house, and there'll be a lot of people out there who are like that, and that's perfectly fine. It's not me, but if that's you, I think that's perfectly valid. Yeah. Subjective, the word of the day.
Yeah, absolutely, it all is, and you have to bear that in mind when you're talking about gear, especially vintage gear, because there will people that have very strong opinions saying, oh my god, it's ridiculous money, and it is what it is. They're kind of worth it in a way, whether that's resale or what. So yeah. Shall we finish this bad boy up?
I think we should.
I kind of don't want to. I could keep chatting about this forever.
I'm really enjoying this. There's loads of stuff that's behind us and on this other side of the room that we haven't filmed, we haven't played with yet. That's what we're going to do this afternoon.
Absolutely.
Really, there's a couple of things back here in the corner that I'm really looking forward to messing around with.
Yeah, definitely.
Not for the podcast, but for just me.
Yeah. And if you want to see more of the stuff that's here, you need to go to Andy Baxter's website. If you give that a Google, should come up, and we will leave the links in the dump down below for you to check out yourselves. We want to thank Andy and Jim for having us here today. We've had an amazing time already, and we're only halfway through the day, and it's just been fantastic. Let us know in a comment down below what basses you've enjoyed seeing today and what basses you like on their website as well, because there is so much on there to feast your eyes on and take a look at. It's definitely the home of vintage basses, it feels like. There's so much here.
It really feels like that. And there's a lot of knowledge in the room. Like Andy were talking to us about stuff that I was like, oh, this is this and this is pre this and this means that, and I was like, I wouldn't even look at that. Like, there was jazz basses where it's like, oh, from 1960 something,
the first year.
Yeah, this is what they did with the neck, this is what they did with the fretboard, and I was looking at two basses going, I didn't even notice that on the instruments. That's not the difference. My brain went, they look the same, and they're not. And that's like, you can tell as a retail unit, as a store, there's a lot of knowledge going into the instruments. And every single one, I know I don't particularly like the Thunderbird, but the setup on everything is, everything we've touched today has been like,
oh, yeah, absolutely.
I could take any of these off the wall and immediately walk into a gig or a recording session. It's all been looked after really well. There's a lot of love and care like in the room.
100%. Yes, there is.
Yes, there is.
It's worth noting as well that it's not just vintage instruments that Andy Baxter does here. We've got, not sure if you can see it quite back here. We've got an NG2. NG2? Yeah.
NG2.
NG2 Dingwall, a Linto 5-string jazz bass up here.
Spectre.
And, the Spectre, and all new Mike Lull basses as well, which we're hopefully going to check out. So, again, head to the website to check out some of the basses that they've got in stock. If we've done all the admin about following on podcast, socials, etc. Make sure you go and do all of that. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave us a comment down below. Chris, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me literally everywhere under that guy on bass. Johnny, where can the people find you?
You can find me just at Jonny Dibble on Instagram. Jonny Dibble bass. Jonny Bass Dibble. Jonny Dibble ass. That's what it is everywhere. On TikTok and YouTube as well.
You know the band Alexis on Fire?
Alex is on Fire.
I call it, and I refuse. I'll say it to the face. I'm never gonna change it. I will always call that band Alex is on Fire, because it's the better band name. Alex is on Fire.
Agree to disagree. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.